Hey, I'm Carly. I run an advertising agency called PPC Farm, and I have managed millions of dollars in advertising spend across every major category on Amazon. I've seen what works, I've seen what doesn't, and most importantly, I have seen what Amazon advertisers and sellers are struggling with the most in their PPC. And after auditing hundreds of Amazon accounts, I've come to a big realization. The difference between the best advertisers and people just burning cash on PPC might surprise you. It's not about having secret keyword hacks or new bidding strategies. It's actually all in how you think, in your mindset. In this video, I'm going to show you the exact mindset shifts that separate the most profitable Amazon advertisers from everybody else. And these same principles actually can apply to any paid ads, whether that's Meta or Google Ads or even the stock market. But I'm an Amazon advertiser, so I'm going to be focusing on Amazon today. So here's the thing about PPC that I think not a lot of people talk about, and that's that actually the strategies involved are really not that complicated. Now, I'm not saying you don't need someone who's an expert with years of experience to help you, but at the end of the day, you find the keywords that convert, you bid the appropriate amount on those keywords, cut what doesn't work, and then rinse and repeat. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, but essentially that's what it boils down to. So then why are so many advertisers and Amazon sellers struggling with their PPC, always searching for the next big thing that's going to finally fix their campaigns? It might not have anything to do with the strategy, but actually the mindset that you're approaching PPC with. So here's what I mean. For example, when I audit accounts that are particularly failing and just hemorrhaging money, I see some common patterns. They'll have a good initial strategy, followed by some kind of panicky adjustments that are clear in the data after reacting to things that don't work, and then there's traffic, and then their traffic tanks or their ACoS gets ruined and they freak out and they don't know where they went wrong and they don't know how to fix it, and so they come to us. Now, that could mean that their original strategy is wrong, but it could also just mean that they are not approaching PPC in the right way. So let's dive in and look at the major mindset shifts that I think that you should adopt if you are going to be managing your PPC, whether that's for yourself as a seller or for other people. Okay, the first shift that I want to talk about is to think in trends, not in days. So what do I mean by that? Let me show you what it looks like in an account. So here is one day in one of our clients' accounts. You can see that ACoS looks really bad at 66%. And if you were this client or this seller and you were checking your account on this day, you would probably freak out. But let's zoom out. Let's look at the weekly view. Now, that looks much better. It's not great. Definitely room for improvement, but much, much better once we get a zoomed out overall view of what's happening over a longer time period. Now let's zoom out even further and take a look at the past 30 days. Now here you can see that we have a 36% ACoS. Now for this account, that's actually very good. This is a high margin account, so we're happy with this. And if we had only looked at that single day, March 15th there, we might have made the wrong decisions. But when you zoom out, when you look at trends and not just days, you're going to get a much better picture of what's actually happening in an account. So when we talk about mindset, actually in psychology, there is a reason why we as humans do this. And it's particularly potent when that change is new. And it's called recency bias. Basically, we give too much weight to a new thing, a new change, some kind of novelty in the account. So I have clients that check their accounts every single day. That's fine. I check accounts every single day. But if you are reacting to every single new change that's coming through in your account, you are probably going to fail. So here's what you should do instead to approach this with a better mindset. So like I said, it doesn't mean just forgetting about the campaigns or purposefully not looking at them. I would still recommend that you review your campaigns every single day. That way you could check if there's any fires or any major problems happening. You need to be on top of it, but that doesn't mean that you need to react every single day and make big changes to your strategy. Of course, we are also adjusting bids actually every single hour, but I'll touch more on that in my next point. But that is because we have data to support those actions. Whereas what I'm talking about is you don't want to be going in every single day and making big bid adjustments or reactively pausing campaigns, things like that. So you're checking your campaigns every single day, but you're not reacting. So when do you react? I recommend looking at a trailing 7, 15, or 30-day period of data, or like a weighted average across those time periods. That will allow you to see patterns and actually have enough data to have something significant to look at and to compare to, because that's really what it's about, is getting to significance. This way you're actually making decisions based on the data and not just on dips and spikes and little blips in the radar. Think of it like you were investing in the stock market. You probably wouldn't go and just panic sell your entire portfolio of stocks based on one bad day. Instead, you would zoom out, look at the bigger picture, and try to identify trends and patterns. So for example, let's say in your account, you often have fewer sales on Monday, and you happen to notice this on Tuesday or Wednesday, so you go in and make changes based on what happened on Monday. But you don't realize that this is a trend and it's happening every single Monday. So what's going to happen is you're going to kill your traffic every single week. Instead, what you should do is look at longer periods of time, understand that that is a trend, that every Monday you're seeing that dip in sales, and adjust your strategy according to that, according to the data, rather than just a one-off observation. So, okay, you might be like, yeah, that's fine, I get it, but it's really hard not to freak out. I mean, this is my baby, this is my business, I have a lot of money invested to this, so naturally I get freaked out. Okay, don't worry, that ties into my next mindset shift, which is to manage with data and not your emotions. So there's another psychological principle that I think applies to this mindset shift, and that's called loss aversion. It's a well-established concept that people often have twice as much aversion to losing something than to the pleasure of gaining something. So this matters a lot in PPC. Of course, there are a lot of metrics in PPC that can kind of trigger this loss aversion action versus gain in PPC. So when you see your ACoS spike or your impressions drop and you feel that kind of panicky feeling, your brain might be entering into a different decision-making mode where you are optimizing for short-term gain or trying to avoid loss. But this is actually the opposite of good PPC management. So let me show you what this looks like in practice. So you can see here that we had 2 days that were looking worse than the previous week or 2 weeks. And the client reached out and they were like, hey, these 2 days don't look very good. We've had a pretty bad ACoS compared to our usual ACoS. Let's lower the budget. Now that's not an unreasonable request, but I do think it comes from a place of emotions rather than understanding the actual data and what's happening. But they're the client, it's their money. So we went ahead and reduced the spend and the budget. And you can see what happened next is that ACoS actually got worse. And then we had a little period here of convincing them that this wasn't working. Spend went back up and you can see stats improved. So that doesn't mean that you always just need to spend more. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying reacting to just a couple of days of data versus looking at the bigger picture zoomed out might lead you to making short-sighted decisions that are optimizing towards short-term changes when actually it's the wrong move. So remember, you are kind of an investor when you're running paid ads, and successful investors don't just panic at the first sign of changes in the data. They trust their strategy and wait for trends to play out before reacting. So I actually created a guide to help you determine whether or not you're dealing with an actual emergency situation or if it's just anomalies in the data. I call it the Amazon PPC fire drill. If you're seeing, impressions drop or sales drop, I have a link to that in the description. It's totally free. You can go download it and hopefully it'll help you kind of assess the situation with your campaigns. Okay, so let's move on to the third mindset shift that will help you to be a better advertiser and run better PPC campaigns. This mindset shift I'm calling be a scientist. This mindset shift actually kind of includes the first 2 mindset shifts that I think are important, and it can really transform your entire advertising approach. So what I mean by be a scientist is that you should experiment with intention. Okay, so think about, what do scientists do? They don't just randomly do things with no pre-planning and no way to measure them, right? They develop hypotheses, they design an experiment, they test those hypotheses, and then they analyze the results carefully against the parameters they originally set out. And finally, they draw conclusions. So I think we all probably learned about the scientific method in middle school, maybe, but this is a chance for you to actually use it in real life. So a lot of Amazon sellers and advertisers approach PPC with kind of this like, I hope it works sort of a strategy. And that's actually really not a strategy at all, because there's no methodology behind it. So say if the cost per new customer search term exceeds X amount, then I will stop the campaign. There's not really any room for subjectivity in there, right? When it reaches that number, cut it off. The other important part about designing these kind of experiments or testing hypotheses in this way allows you to come to conclusions, like I said, but those conclusions can also become algorithms you can use throughout your campaign strategy. For example, if you have found time and time again that 15 clicks and no sales is a good rule of thumb threshold, you can build that into your strategy. So now anytime a keyword or a search term reaches 15 clicks and no sales, you know it's time to, say, adjust the bid by 10%. Or if a keyword has a 40% ACoS for more than 10 days, then adjust the bid down by 10%. You're able to actually come up with algorithms that make your life easier and make your strategy consistent and allow you to be more objective. You're not just hoping campaigns will work, you have a systematized way of evaluating whether or not they do work. Let's move on to the final mindset shift that I think any good advertiser should be adopting, and that is to simply accept uncertainty. So the hard truth, of course, is no matter how experienced or skilled you are at PPC, there are always going to be things outside of your control. Amazon might change its algorithm, new competitors are going to come into the space, consumer trends could shift overnight. There's all sorts of things that are simply outside of your control as an advertiser that there's just nothing you can do about it. So professional PPC managers don't try to eliminate uncertainty. Instead, they embrace it and they build systems that thrive on that uncertainty or thrive despite the uncertainty. So for example, I get asked a lot if we have any sort of a guarantee for ACoS or revenue generated. And I always have to tell them, unfortunately, no, there is no guarantee in advertising. It's a reasonable request, but that level of certainty just doesn't exist in PPC. And we can get close a lot of the time. But unfortunately, we do have to understand that we're dealing with a huge market of shoppers and sellers. And because of that, you're going to see ups and downs that are just unpredictable sometimes. It's kind of like if you're playing poker, you can do everything right, but still have a bad outcome, right? You can choose all of the right options in a hand, but given the hand that you're dealt or the hand that other people are dealt, it just might not turn out the way you want it to. So how do you do that? How do you build a system that is still successful despite PPC being so unpredictable? Well, I recommend first you can use those algorithms that I talked about in mindset shift number 3 about being a scientist, right? Once you've developed that level of experience, right, you're able to see what works and what doesn't really well and put those into your system so that you now have, again, an objective system that makes changes within accounts versus just reactive decisions. That will help a lot. The other thing I recommend is to have a diverse portfolio of keywords for every single ASIN, not just the big high search volume keywords, but long tail keywords as well. And this will ensure that even if you see strange trends happening on your big most important keywords, or if you only have one keyword in your campaign, you will be much less exposed to those shifts in search volume. Next, I also always recommend testing small before going big. This will help you to, again, avoid crashes and burns at a large scale. And then finally, you're going to be working more with probability, than certainty. So figuring out what strategy has the highest chance of working instead of 100%, because it doesn't exist. So that's why I'm so passionate about understanding the mindset side of running PPC. And I mean, of course, you do need the skills to back it up, like I said, but I really think you need both. And that's why it's really important to know who is actually running your account, because if they don't understand how to approach PPC in this way, or if they don't have good systems in place for their team to manage PPC in this way, I think that you can suffer. Your accounts can suffer. So if you are struggling with your PPC right now, I would love to help you out. I can do a deep dive into your account, tell you what's working and what's not, probably point out some mindset shifts you need to make. And I can do that completely for free. You can just head over to ppcbarb.com, go to our contact us page and fill out the form. Like I said, it's totally free. This is what I do all day, every day. So I'd be super happy to help in any way that I can. Thanks for watching. You can check out my latest video here.